חיים, חיים בחסד, מחיים מתים ברחמים רבים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו. אתה גיבור, אתה מחיה מתים, אתה אדוני רב להושיע. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו.
סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, רופא חולים ומתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אלוהי אבותינו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו.
Well, good evening, everybody. I want to thank you so much for being here today. This is an historic event for our city, for our valley, for the churches of our valley, and we are so thrilled that you're here. I do want to welcome our online audience, too. We want to thank you guys for joining us online, and I'm so thrilled that Dr. Newman is here. You'll have a chance to meet him here in a few minutes, but I just want to ask that if you would just take a moment and join me in prayer, and we'll ask for God's blessing on this time, okay? Lord, we want to come to you today and thank you so much for this day. We thank you, God, for the privilege of being in this place. We thank you, Lord, as we are here together to celebrate this wonderful relationship that we have with the nation of Israel and the people of Israel. We thank you, God, that you have ordained this special people and this nation, Lord, for a special purpose. And we have read about how you have fulfilled that purpose in Scriptures, Lord, in years past. And we read about in the prophecies, Lord, of how those special plans will be fulfilled in years to come. And so we are so honored and blessed, Lord, to be able to honor and bless the nation of Israel today. So we're asking, Lord, that you would just grant us your presence in this place. Would we know and feel, God, that you are here, and would this time be honoring and glorifying to you? And we pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Gadol Elohai Shiruki Gadol Elohai Kol Echad Yireh Ki Gadol Elohai Gadol Elohai Shiruki Gadol Elohai Kol Echad Yireh Ki Gadol Elohai Shem Me'al Kol Shem Otcha Ra'ui Lechalel Libi Ashir Ki Gadol Elohai Shem Me'al Kol Shem Libi Ashir Ki Gadol Elohai. How great is our God? How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? No, we'll see how great is our God. Come on, sing it again. How great is our God? How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? Oh, we'll see how great is our God. Gadol Elohai Shiruki Gadol Elohai Kol Echad Yireh Ki Gadol Elohai Gadol Elohai Gadol Elohai Shiruki Gadol Elohai Kol Echad Yireh Ki Gadol Elohai Shem Me'al Kol Shem Udcha Ra'ui Lehalel Libi Ashir Ki Gadol Elohai Gadol Elohai Gadol Elohai Shiruki Gadol Elohai Kol Echad Yireh Ki Gadol Elohai. How great is our God, yes. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? Oh, we'll see how great is our God.
Let's sing how great is our God.
How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? Oh, we'll see how great is our God.
I am Hillel Newman, and I am Israel's Consul General to Los Angeles. I will have the pleasure of serving as Israel's senior representative to the southwestern region of the United States. My special relationship with the United States began already as a young Israeli adult, and I decided to go on a trek on my own. Instead of Latin America or the Himalayas, I decided to go coast to coast in the US. Already then, I fell in love with this wonderful country. I got to know this magical place full of fascinating sights. I learned to appreciate the wonderful alliance and meeting of values between Israel and the US. My service in Los Angeles is a continuation of this journey. I have come to learn more. I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, in Sea Point, along the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. As a youngster, we immigrated to Netanya, a beautiful Israeli sea city with fantastic beaches. We lived again on the coast opposite the Mediterranean Sea. It is therefore only natural that I now moved to Los Angeles. Tel Aviv and Los Angeles, both coast cities, have a lot in common. They are both cities of summer, freedom, fun, and a good mood. I see Los Angeles as a galaxy full of stars and planets. One star is the business world, one star is of modern technology, another star or planet is of course Hollywood, the city of movies. My job will be to pin an Israeli flag on every star, ensuring Israeli life on every planet, and to strengthen the special alliance between Israel and the United States. My first career was in academics, teaching Jewish history. During my 20-year career in the Israeli diplomatic service, I have had the privilege of serving as policy advisor to 3 foreign ministers, to serve as ambassador to 2 Muslim states, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, and to serve as policy advisor to the Director General of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our State Department. Los Angeles is most definitely the capital and empire of the movie and television industry. I am most proud that many Israelis have made a successful career in Hollywood. We have successful actors, writers, producers in features and television series. I will be glad to support in any way I can any further collaboration between our talents and the local talents for the benefit of all. I am proud to represent the state of Israel, a real miracle state, a state of innovation and ingenuity. God bless America, God bless Israel, and God bless the special bipartisan relationship between Israel and the United States.
Well, it's my great privilege to introduce to you Dr. Hillel Newman. Dr. Newman, would you join me up here on the stage? Thank you so much for coming today. I would also like to invite on the stage the city council members from San Jacinto. If you are here as a city council member from San Jacinto, we'd like to welcome you and join us up here on the stage. Crystal Ruiz, our mayor pro tem, and Valerie Vandenberg is also here. She's joining us on stage. While they're making their way up, I want to tell you guys, you know, we live in a special place. I'm just telling you, I've been saying this for a while. God is really blessing our valley, and He's blessing us with godly leaders, with individuals who are God-fearing people. And Dr. Newman, the City Council of San Jacinto would like to present you with a declaration of solidarity. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Crystal Ruiz, Mayor Pro Tem of San Jacinto, and let her take it from here.
Thank you so much. First of all, it is such an honor to be here with you. The people of San Jacinto, the people of Hemet, this valley, we truly are standing with you in whatever you need. We are here for you. But I'm going to read this to you because this to me is important that our folks know what we're saying here. This is a proclamation from the city of San Jacinto. It says, whereas according to the Hebrew Bible, Israel's origins can be tracked back to Abraham, who is considered the father of both Judaism through his son Isaac, and Islam through his son Ishmael. And before I go any further, all of this information that I got, I researched. You know me, I research things. A lot of these things are on the original proclamation. And the reason they are is because the U.S. federal government investigated Israel. And they found more than just a Hebrew Bible claiming that we came from through Abraham. They found documents and documents and documents, but the most familiar one to us is the one that is the Hebrew Bible. So whereas the nation of Israel has many important archaeological and religious sites considered sacred by Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, and whereas on May 14th, 1948, President Harry S. Truman recognized the Provisional Jewish Government as the de facto authority of the Jewish state, and on January 31st, 1949, de jure recognition was then extended to the Jewish state, whereas between 1882 and 1903, approximately 35,000 Jews relocated to Palestine, and between 1904 and 1914, another 40,000 Jews settled in the surrounding areas. And whereas the nation of Israel, with a current population of more than 9 million people, and expected to be more than 12.5 million people by 2050. And on December 6, 2017, President Donald J. Trump announced that he would be relocating the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Don't we love Donald Trump? And whereas on May 14th, 2018, the United States officially opened the embassy in Jerusalem, Israel, 70 years to the day that President Truman recognized Israel as an independent country, making the United States the first nation to do so. Whereas, while Israel has been plagued by unpredictable war and violence in the past, many local and national leaders, along with our citizens, are hoping for a secure, stable nation in the future. And whereas it seems right and fitting that the citizens of San Jacinto are urged to pray for an end to the wars and violence and to recognize the importance of the Israeli people, now, therefore, on this 12th day of February 2023, the city of San Jacinto does hereby proclaim that we honor and commend the nation of Israel and extend the hand of friendship to the people of Israel as we remain steadfast in our support to the nation of Israel. We ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinians, Jewish and Christian, and Muslims, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. That is from us to you. I'm going to give this to Val. I'm going to give this to Val.
Wow, what an act to follow. That was a mouthful. Mine is not as long, so you're all welcome. This is a certificate of recognition on behalf of the city of San Jacinto. We'd like to congratulate you on your 75 years. We are here for you. We believe in you. We support you. God bless Israel. God bless us all.
Thank you so much. I am so honored, and I just want to bring to you the greetings of Jerusalem, to your wonderful city of San Jacinto, and wish all the mayor, the temple mayor, everyone, the council members, and the people the greatest success. Thank you very much.
You guys pose for a picture. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. So we're not done yet, Dr. Newman. I'd like to invite the council members from the city of Hemet to join me up here on the stage. And I do want to mention something that Val mentioned, is that Israel is celebrating its 75th anniversary as a nation. This is a special year. Yes. And Mayor Joe Males is joining us here, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Malcolm Lilienthal. And I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Mayor Mills, and you can take over.
Thank you. I'm a man of a few words, so basically I want to thank you for visiting our city, for visiting our valley. We're happy to have you here. We support Israel. Israel and America have always been together and bonded together, and I'm thankful to have you here. Everything in Hemet is bigger, so. Malcolm, would you like to say a few words?
Ditto.
All right. We're honoring you with the proclamation, the 75th anniversary of Israel's independence. Whereas the city of Hemet recognizes the rich history of the state of Israel and supports the right and the responsibility of Israel to the security and well-being of its citizens, and whereas it recognized that the sovereign state of Israel is the greatest ally of the United States in the Middle East. Yes. And whereas, as a result of the Holocaust, the Jewish people of Israel were oppressed and in need of a homeland, therefore leading to the United Nations, along with the U.S. support, passing the Partition Plan in 1947 to allow full Jewish immigration into Palestine and the two autonomous states be established, and whereas President Harry S. Truman administration formally recognized the provision, if it's not right, let me know, and the provisional Jewish government as the de facto authority of Israel on May 14, 1948. And whereas our country has shown support for Israel at the time of its rebirth in 1948, its growth as a nation, its battle against terrorism, and its efforts in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and whereas the state of Israel will celebrate 75 years of independence on May 14, 2023. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Joe Mills, along with the Hemet City Council, do hereby present this proclamation to stand in solidarity with the state of Israel, presented February 12, 2023.
You guys pose for a picture, okay? Yes, sir.
May the blessings of Zion and Jerusalem be on the city, the mayor, pro tem mayor, council members, and the people and citizens of this wonderful city. I bring you the greetings and the blessings of the people and the government of Israel. Thank you very much.
Well, we could sit down now, Dr. Newman, okay? All right. Hey, all right, yeah. Oh, let me turn this on for you, okay? All right, here you go. I can't even tell you how special this is. I don't know, and you know, I'm not an expert in these things, Dr. Newman, but I don't know how many sister cities like ours in the state of California have come together unanimously declaring support for the nation of Israel. It's got to be a first. And we are so thrilled to be here, and we are so thrilled that our leaders have voiced their support for the people of Israel. And you know, there's a blessing that that the Old Testament tells us about in Genesis chapter 12, as God makes His covenant with Abraham, and He says, "I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you." And I'm convinced that the United States is what it is today because of its ongoing and historical and traditional support for the nation and the people of Israel. You know, it wasn't until after World War II that the United States became a superpower. And there's no coincidence that coming out of that great war, the U.S. declared its support and fought for the sovereignty of Israel as a nation. And in so doing, we have reaped the blessings of God on our nation. And so we recognize that as a people and as a valley and as multiple cities here. And so we are blessed and honored to have you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And Pastor Engel, thank you so much for your gracious hospitality and inviting me. And I'm so pleased to be with your communities here. I'm sorry that I'm between you and the Super Bowl.
Well, yes, I know. This is our
But-
Super Bowl right
Yeah.
here. This is it, yeah. This is it.
I'll just say one word in response, and I'll say it is true. Israel has no better ally than the United States. But the United States has no better friend than Israel. This is a relationship which goes beyond individuals or in parties. This is a value-based, founded relationship. And there are very few states which the United States can get so much benefit from a small state like Israel. You know, the United States gives aid to many countries around the world. At a time of need, they know they can trust Israel. There are states that they give aid to, and when they asked to use the airspace of that state, they refused. Even in the Middle East, even a neighbor of Israel. They know that from Israel, they'll never get a refusal. Just recently, Iron Domes, I'm sure you all know what that is, were deployed in the United States to save and defend American lives. This is developed by Israeli technology with American money. There are not many countries that can bring such benefit to the United States. So I think that this is a long-term, value-orientated relationship which brings blessings to both sides because we share the values of our belief and the values that we uphold on a daily basis. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I was asked a question earlier today by one of our church members. What is a consul general? And so I said, well, that's a great question. I think I'm going to ask Dr. Newman that question. So, you know, I think everybody would like to know how you became the consul general. You know, what are your roles? What are your duties? Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay, first the terminology. What the hell is a consul general, right? So, let me explain. When a country opens up an office of interests or an official representation in a country, in another country, then by the protocols of Vienna and whatever it's called, an embassy. But that's if it's in the capital. So if you open up an office in the capital, it's called the embassy. But once you open up another office in the same country, and it's not in the capital, you can't call it embassy number 2, right? So what do you call it? So in Vienna, they sat down on the protocols of diplomatic service and they thought about it for months until they came to the idea that an additional office is called a consulate general. Why? I don't know why. But that's what they called it. So any country that opens up more than one mission in another country, which is out of the capital, it's immediately called a consulate general. Now, the head of the embassy is called an ambassador. The head of a consulate general is called a consul general. So when you hear the term Consul General of Israel in Los Angeles, it means the head of the mission of Israel in Los Angeles. We do everything. We do everything that an embassy does. We do political networking, trade and commerce, cultural activity, reaching out to communities, everything. Everything is under our umbrella of activity. So every morning you have to get up and decide, okay, what am I going to do today? Am I going to work on a mission to Israel or a political meeting or a cultural event, or everything's on our table. You asked how I got to it. That's an interesting story. You know, some people from birth, they want to be a diplomat. I'm not like that.
God bless you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, God bless you.
I started off and I studied in yeshiva, which is high Judaic studies, and everyone thought that I would be a rabbi, which I did not. My father was a rabbi. He was the leader of a community, the largest community in South Africa, and people thought I would become a rabbi, but I did not. I went into academic studies. I became an academic. I did a PhD, and I started teaching history in Israel, Bar-Ilan University in Israel. And then I had to make a bit of a livelihood. So a friend of mine came up to me and he said, well, why don't you run for the student union? And if you run for the student union, then you get into a position and you can get a salary and you can continue your studies at the same time. So, okay, I became a student activist, and I ran for the student union and I got in. And then I got in another year, second year. And then in Israel, the politics of the student unions is very political. It's very heavily involved in politics. The student unions are very strong. They can strike schools in Israel all over. So they appointed me, in a deal we made, they appointed me the head of the international relations for all the students of Israel. We have what's called the National Union of Israeli Students, which includes all the Israeli students, which is more than, today it's about 300,000. And you represent all the students. And we started doing missions, exchanges of students. And somehow we made a connection with Turkey. And at the time, Turkey, we were friendly, but there was not really warm peace. So we arranged the exchange of students. It was the first time, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is like the State Department, called me up. And they said, "You're doing an exchange of students with Turkey?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Can we join?" I said, "Sure." So they came along. And then we started doing projects with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our State Department. And after a year or two of working together, they said to me, "You should be a diplomat." That was the first time I thought about it. And I gave in my credentials. You have to go through tests, and you go through a course, which is called a cadet course. The American Foreign Service is exactly the same. You do a cadet course, and by that you become a diplomat. And that's how I became a diplomat.
Wow, wow. Well, I don't know too many children when they're little say, "I want to be a politician," or a diplomat, which is probably a good thing. I mean, we might second guess those kids if we so anyways. The Israeli government is a fascinating thing for me, and I'm not super familiar with all of the ins and outs and the way it works, but recently, in the most recent elections, I've paid a little bit more attention to what's happening over there, and I've noticed that over the last few years, there's been quite a few elections, actually, and which I guess is not unique to Israel, but Prime Minister Netanyahu was just recently reelected, and he's formed a new government. And I was wondering if, just for the sake of everyone here, if you could just briefly explain sort of that election process, why there's been so many elections recently, and do you anticipate that this newly formed government is going to last? And what's the difference between Netanyahu's government and the previous government?
Sure. When I think we've been through 5 elections in the past 3.5 years in Israel. So when I think of that, it reminds me of a joke. You know the joke about the kid that gets up in the morning and says, "Mom, my coffee's much better." So she says to him, "Sure, you practiced all night." So we're getting better at voting because we practiced a lot. And anyone who wants advice, we can give a lot of advice.
I think we could use some advice on our side of the drink. Yeah, I think so.
But I'll just yes. Our fifth election campaign, and Netanyahu won. And the first thing to be said about it is the strength of the democracy in Israel. The will of the people decides everything. There is no other country in the Middle East with such a vibrant, robust democracy as Israel. At the will of the people, they toppled the longest-serving prime minister in the history of Israel, Netanyahu, and after a year and a half, reinstated him. Mm-hmm. Right? So we also learn from our mistakes, right? But that is the will of the people, and if the will of the people in another year or 2 or 3 decides to change and topple Netanyahu, the will of the people is what decides. And that's the strength of Israel. So it's like a small oasis in the jungle of the Middle East, right? You think of an oasis with a nice stream of water and a nice, beautiful house. Well, that's Israel in the Middle East in the field of democracy and the values of democracy. Now, what is interesting about what I should say is that the system is different than here. You mentioned it in the question. Here you have a presidential system, presidential parliament, and you vote for a president, and he comes in, and unless he's impeached under very special circumstances, he lasts for 4 years, and then you go to elections, right? In Israel, it's a different system. It's called a parliamentary system, where you don't actually vote for an individual, you vote for a party. And then the prime minister is a result of negotiations which take place between the parties. You need at least 61 members of parliament out of 120 in our Knesset, in our parliament, to come together to make a coalition. So you need parties coming together to make a coalition. That's what happened. Netanyahu managed to get together a coalition of more than 61. He has now 64 members of parliament that support him, and thus he became prime minister. In the previous election, tell you a little secret, which was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 8 different parties came together in order to topple Netanyahu. 8 different parties, from left, from right, conservatives together with liberal progressives, religious, non-religious, Arab, Jewish, everyone came together in order to topple Netanyahu. And they had a very slim majority of 61 out of 120 that came together, which was the camp which was larger than the 59 that Netanyahu had. So on those 2 votes, a difference of 2, Netanyahu was toppled, and we had a prime minister. And the interesting thing about this whole system is, about these elections, is that it's not about big security issues or foreign policy. You can hardly find a difference between the opposition and the coalition in Israel today about the big issues like peace, how to make peace with the Arab neighbors, the Palestinians, how to defend ourselves against Iran and the enemies of peace. There's a wide consensus in Israel. So what were the issues in the elections? The issues were mainly domestic, state and religion, how to regularize the relations between the state and the religion in the state, because we are the one and only Jewish state, majority Jewish state. So there are issues. How do you run a state when you are also a religion and you have minority groups that are not Jewish, they have full rights, and how do you run a situation like that? A lot of sensitive issues. And one of the biggest issues was the leadership of Netanyahu, whether you support Netanyahu or you're against Netanyahu. That was one of the big issues of the election, and that's why it was difficult to make a government, because even those who come from the conservative bloc, which is the natural bloc of Netanyahu, he belongs to the conservative camp, they also did not support him just because it's Netanyahu, because they didn't accept Netanyahu's leadership. But today, we've been through another election. Netanyahu received 64 out of 120 as a strong coalition. That's regarded as a strong coalition. The chances are that he will not be toppled for the next at least 2 years or so, because he has a coalition which is very much aligned in view, in standpoint. It's a conservative bloc, religious bloc. So they've come together to support Netanyahu.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I remember some of those meetings between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, and some of the historic things that happened underneath both of those leaders together. And you know, I'm personally thrilled, I should say, that he's back as Prime Minister. I think that's going to be a wonderful thing for Israel and the region and the world. And speaking of, speaking of that, Dr. Newman, you had mentioned that there are little things that sort of split the parties and divide them, but there are some things that unite everybody in Israel. And I want to kind of transition into a discussion about some of those things that unite everyone, particularly the security of Israel. Iran, I would state, poses the greatest threat to the safety and sovereignty of Israel. And, you know, almost daily there are both overt and covert military operations taking place to mitigate the threat from Iran. I know the United States is partnering with the nation of Israel in dealing with those threats. And so first, I want to just ask you, from your perspective, am I right, does Iran present the greatest threat to Israel today? If so, could you explain that a little bit to everyone here? And then secondly, how can we as American citizens contribute to the peace and safety of Israel?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Yes, Iran poses the greatest threat to the people of Israel and the state of Israel. and I'll explain why. You know, our sages said, you know, we're coming soon to Passover. And in the Jewish Passover, we do what's called a seder, which means we sit at a table and we read a textbook about the history of the redemption of the people of Israel from Egypt at the time, Passover. And one of the sayings in the Haggadah, in the book of the Seder of Passover, is, in every generation there will be an enemy bent out to annihilate the people of Israel. B'chol dor vador, every generation. And then God is there for us and saves us. Now it's an amazing thing. Every generation, there is some rogue leader who is bent on the destruction of the people of Israel. We go back, you know, from Pharaoh in the time of Egypt, going through last generation we had Hitler in Germany, in Nazi Germany, and today we have Iran. Iran is a fellow member of the United Nations, sits in the family of nations, as they would say, and calls outwardly, publicly, for the destruction and annihilation of the state of Israel. How would you imagine if any other state had a situation like that, where a fellow member of you're sitting together in a room, right? And a fellow member calls for the annihilation of another country. You would expect the other nations to say, this is unacceptable, you're kicked out of this body, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen to Iran. Iran is a full-fledged member. But the problem with Iran is that it's not only words, it's not just rhetoric. They work on a daily basis to try and destabilize the entire Middle East and annihilate the state of Israel. And how do they do that? They do that through terrorism. They have terrorist groups which are out there plotting all the time to kill Israelis or Jews. Besides that, they have terrorist groups, terrorist units, which we call proxy groups, like Hamas, Hezbollah, which they have given support militarily and financially. And now there are political elements which sit in Lebanon. Hezbollah sits in Lebanon. And every now and again sends rockets against Israel, destabilizes the region, is now a member of the government of Lebanon. Right? They have ministers from the Hezbollah. And we have Hamas, which is in the southern border of Israel, in the Gaza Strip. Israel relinquished the entire Gaza Strip for peace with the Palestinian Authority, right? That it was that whole paradigm of territories for peace. If only Israel will give territory, we'll get peace. So Israel gave territory. Israel gave territory time and time again. And what happened? No peace. Because in Gaza, which Israel relinquished entirely to the Palestinian Authority, the Hamas took over. And the Hamas is financed by Iran and sends rockets. They've sent thousands of rockets against Israel. Innocent people, just civilians living in cities, are every now and again threatened by a rocket, and they have 15 seconds to reach a bomb shelter before the rocket lands. So that's why we developed the Iron Dome, which is a kind of a protection. So you have these proxy groups which are financed by Iran, and their mission is to attack Israel. Both the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and these proxy groups are not only against Israel, but also there's a proxy war going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran through proxy wars, like the Houthis in Yemen and other places. So Iran is the number one destabilizer in the entire region. It's seeking nuclear warheads, and Israel has declared that we will do everything to prevent Iran from becoming nuclear. And we know that there was a time that Iraq developed mass destruction weapons. And there was only one country that acted. That was Israel. Israel went and attacked, bombed the nuclear reactor in Iraq. And that was in the period of Saddam Hussein, long before President Bush and all that, right? And in Syria, they were developing a nuclear reactor, and it was bombed. Sometimes you have to act. And with Iran, Israel says clearly that we will not allow Iran to have nuclear weapons, because it's a danger not only to Israel, it's a danger to the United States of America, it's a danger to the Western world. So if you ask why Iran is the number one threat, I would say because of all of these reasons together. It's a comprehensive thing of terrorism, missiles which they're developing, nuclear warheads which they want to develop, and they're destabilizing of the entire region through proxy groups. How can everyone participate and contribute in this battle? First of all, being a voice. In a democracy like the United States, every voice counts. Today, everyone can be an ambassador, right? On social media, to your congressman. It's important that you voice your opinions and you tell your congressman, you must support Israel, you should make sure that Iran does not have nuclear capability. There's some who believe that through negotiations, through a deal, an agreement, they can come to an agreement with Iran. Well, we don't say that it's impossible, but we believe that the only thing that will change Iran is if there's tremendous pressure and crippling sanctions against Iran. And if they feel that their regime is in danger, that's the time that they might change their policy. But signing an agreement which just does good for them is not the way to change their policy in our eyes.
Well, and they have actively labeled the United States as the great Satan, and they actively label the nation of Israel as the little Satan. And so their fight is really not just against Israel. They really do not like the United States of America. Their fight is against America as well. And I do think that if they were to obtain nuclear weapons and were able to develop the technology, that they wouldn't hesitate to send those weapons over here to the United States. And so this is a fight not just that Israel needs to engage in, it's also a fight that the United States needs to stay engaged in as well.
I agree 100%. There are times, there are critical times in history. If you go back in time, like for instance with Hitler and with other, when instead of confronting the danger, they appeased the danger. And they thought that appeasement will help. We all remember Chamberlain, with the famous document that he signed peace with Hitler, and Hitler was just scoffing and laughing behind his back, because the next move that he was to invade Czechoslovakia and Poland, and all the agreements were worthless. So there are such rogue leaders in the world, and we must recognize them and confront them instead of appeasing them.
Yes, yeah, I agree, yeah. Well, and and that challenge requires great leadership. It requires individuals who have courage, who are willing to sort of make the hard decisions and do things that maybe aren't always popular. I want to transition just a little bit. This is kind of on the same subject here, but I want to talk just for a few minutes about the Abraham Accords. This is something extremely special. I know that, I've got a thought. I'm gonna ask you what your thought is first, and then I'll tell you what I was thinking. But who is, briefly, if you could explain to everybody what the Abraham Accords are, and then I got a question for you about it. Who's the next nation to sign the accord? And I've got my own thought on who I think it's going to be. I'd like to hear yours first. I'm going to put you on the spot, I guess, but I'm no expert in this area, but I have been reading and following. So if you can just tell everybody about that. And this is incredible, by the way. Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely incredible, these Abraham Accords. So if you can just fill everybody in on what that is, and then give us your prediction. How about that?
Sure.
All right. Okay.
Okay. With Abraham's, for all those Abraham Accords, for those who do not know, is the normalizing of relations between Israel and 4 additional Arab states. And this took place under the wonderful leadership of President Trump. We give credit to those who deserve credit. And it was President Trump that recognized Jerusalem, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which many...
Yes.
All the presidents promised that they would move the embassy to Jerusalem. They even signed every year a declaration that the embassy will be moved to Jerusalem. Then the next thing they did was to waive it. Right? Waiving means postpone it. And President Trump said, no, this is a resolution, it should be kept, and he did it. He recognized the Golan Heights, which is the northern part of Israel, taken by Israel, taken back, liberated by Israel against Syria, recognized that as Israel. And the wonderful thing that came true during his period of time was the Abraham Accords. And the Abraham Accords was with Netanyahu, as you mentioned before. Netanyahu, together with President Trump, managed to forge forward in relations between Israel and the Arab world. Now, if you look from where you said, this is the 75th anniversary of Israel, Independence Day of Israel. When Israel was reestablished in 1948, there was zero recognition of Israel in the Arab and Muslim world. Zero. 22 states in the Arab League, all the Arab states got together and decided the resolution, which is called the 3 no's. No recognition of Israel, no compromise with Israel, no negotiations with Israel. Right? Now we're 75 years later, and we have relations with Egypt, full peace relations. We have relations with Jordan. We have understandings with the Palestinians, which we can talk about if you want. And we now have 4 additional Arab states that have joined United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, who have joined the peace with Israel. And the prophets, there are many in Israel who believe that we're in a Messianic era. I mean, what other nation has returned to the homeland after thousands of years of exile, right? Come back, return to their ancient homeland as promised by the prophets, renew their sovereignty, renew the ancient biblical language of Hebrew, where every child now in Israel can read the Bible in the original Hebrew text. And just as the prophets said in the periods of darkness, and they said, the time will come when the people of Israel will return to the land of Israel. And children will play in the streets of Jerusalem. The prophet Zechariah prophesied that the children will play in the streets of Jerusalem and the elderly will sit leisurely in the streets of Jerusalem. And no one believed it, because it was said in a time when the people were dispersed in exile. And today, the elderly sit in the streets of Jerusalem, and the children of Israel can play in the streets of Jerusalem.
Yes.
So the growing acceptance and recognition of Israel from zero, right, to Jordan, Egypt, the Palestinians, UAE, Bahrain, this we also see as part of the acceptance of Israel and the entrance of Israel as a family of nations in the world and the recognition of Israel, which was prophesied by the prophets, right? We all need to read Isaiah chapter 2, where it says that the day will come when the nations will recognize the people of Israel. So this is part of that prophecy. You ask who is next? What I can tell you is that we have a short list, right? On the short list are a few countries which we hope that will come forward one day soon, right? We don't usually name them because it's for them to make that decision. We don't want to embarrass them or call them out too early. I can just say that on the list you can find countries like Oman, even Saudi Arabia, other such countries that one day or another we believe will make that leap and join the wagon of peace. The one lesson to be drawn from the Abraham Accords is that the biggest obstacle to peace in the Middle East, or between Israel and the Arab world and Israel and the Palestinians, is the acceptance of Israel. That's all. Any country that comes forward and recognizes Israel and is prepared to make peace with Israel, there's peace. Israel has never been the obstacle. There's not one country in the entire Middle East that Israel does not recognize, or Israel doesn't want peaceful relations with. When we were re-established, we extended our hand in peace and friendship to the entire global community, including the Arab and Muslim world. They rejected our hand. Any country that comes forward and recognizes Israel, there's peace. So we wait for them to internalize that Israel is an ally and not an enemy, get over their own indoctrination of hatred, which they've grown up on for years, If I have another minute, I'll tell you
Sure.
a story.
Sure, go ahead.
I visited UAE in 2019. That's the United Arab Emirates, right? In 2019, which was before the normalization of relations, we had a confidential visit. Now, there were many confidential meetings, but they were kept confidential until that country decides to normalize its relations with Israel. So I flew together with our foreign minister at the time in a private jet, which left Israel without any tag marks of Israel and landed in UAE. And we had meetings with the leadership of UAE, United Arab Emirates. And we sat at a small table like this, and they had no doubts that they want peace with Israel. They had no doubts about it. They know that they can get tremendous benefit from Israel. We can talk about that if you want sometime. So what was their doubt? Their doubt was, what will be the response from their own Muslim brothers? What will be the response on the Arab street? Because they've indoctrinized generations full of hatred against the Jews, against Israel. And they are victims of their own indoctrination now. They want to move forward in their relations with Israel, but they're afraid that their own people will be against it because of the indoctrination that they've taught them. And they're also afraid of the radical Islam, right? Iran and jihad, Islamists, who might attack them. And the leadership of UAE said to us, you know, if they attack one tanker, it's millions of dollars for us. Is peace with Israel worth millions of dollars? If they attack our oil mines and our gas fields, it's billions of dollars. They were not talking about Israel attacking, they were talking about Iran attacking, right? And they're concerned, and they say, well, they made the decision. They made the decision that it's better peace with Israel over billions of dollars. Okay? But that's a courageous decision to take.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so if you're not going to say which country you think, then I'm going to tell you which one I think it is, all right? And it's one of the two you said. I really believe that Saudi Arabia is going to sign the next accord. I've been watching the news coming out of the Middle East, and there's a lot of activity happening currently between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I am thrilled to know that these things are taking place. These talks are happening. There's already been some normalization that has already taken place. There's been some visits that are historic between Israel publicly. I mean, we're reading about these things between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think, this is my prediction, I think Saudi Arabia is going to be signing the accords in the not-so-distant future. And
You want me to respond?
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I'll say the following. First of all, every country, before it actually forged the official relations, they gave out signals, right? The signals were meant for their own people to see the reaction, as I said, the Arab street, right? So, for instance, United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, before they made peace with Israel, they started treating Israel like a normal relationship. In other words, they allowed Israel's anthem to be played at sports events when Israel won. Imagine, Israel was always penalized. We went to sports events, and even if the Israeli athlete won, they didn't play the anthem. They didn't show the flag, right? We have cases like this all the time, even now, today, with Iran and others. So, all of a sudden, they started allowing the anthem to be played. They allowed the flag to be flown. They allowed opening up of an office of interests, which was not an official office, but Israelis were sitting there, right? So all kinds of things, and it went peacefully. Everything went okay, so they moved forward. Saudi Arabia is also signaling. For the first time, Saudi Arabia started to allow direct flights to fly over their airspace from Israel to the east. In the past, can you imagine this? In the past, Saudi Arabia did not allow an airplane with an Israeli flag, Israeli symbol on the tag, to fly through their airspace, which made flights much more lengthier from Israel to the Far East. They all of a sudden they allowed it. They started off with foreign flights like India Airlines and others to flying from India to Israel, and then they allowed Israeli flights. We have here the representative of Hillel, Sharon Shafir, and I'm sure she can say something about Hillel and how Hillel is also an element in relations between countries, right? So Saudi Arabia now, there was a time that everyone thought that Saudi Arabia would be the last to make peace with Israel. Why? Because of the Wahhabism. They have an Islam which is a bit more radical. It's called Wahhabism. It's not Sunni, it's not Shiite, it's Wahhabism, which is a bit more radical. And they always preached anti-Israel rhetoric. But they've stopped. They've stopped, and that's part of the signaling. Will they be next? I think it depends on a few things, and one of them is the policy. They look at the policy of the United States as well. And they want to know where America stands on Iran. And that's a key element in their decision, in my opinion, whether to forge peace also in the Abraham Accords. They want to know whether United States of America plans to sign an agreement with Iran on its nuclear plan or confront Iran. And I think they're waiting for that. They're waiting also to see whether their relations will be normalized with the United States. There's a bit of tension. So I think those things are key aspects.
Yeah, and you hinted at this, but there's a shared enemy, obviously, between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and that is Iran. Iran has been targeting oil fields and gas fields in Saudi Arabia. So I have another reason why I think Saudi Arabia is going to sign the accord. I really believe that in my lifetime, we're going to see the temple rebuilt on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And I think, this is my thought, that normalizations need to be made with Saudi Arabia in order for that to happen. That's a prediction of mine. I'm not a prophet. But look, I'm sort of taking the pulse of the Middle East, and I think that's going to happen. I'm just saying, I see God working in that way, and I think it's going to happen. Hey, I want to transition really quick and just ask you a simple question. What is, or how do you see, I guess is a better way of putting it, the relations between Israel and the U.S.? I think with every government that the United States elects, same with Israel, right? The relations sort of ebb and flow. They change. They et cetera, et cetera. But from your perspective, how do you see the relations right now between Israel and the United States?
Well, as I mentioned before, the relations between Israel and the United States are embedded in fundamental values. It's beyond any individual, beyond any party, and that's how it should be. Do I believe that it can never happen that a president in the United States might arise that doesn't want the relationship with Israel? It can happen. If there's anything that causes me a rest of sleep at night or unrest, it's that things can change. Things can change. We have Congress members who call out openly against the relationship between Israel and the United States. There's definite anti-Semitism there, right? But they're members of the Congress, and they speak openly against the relationship. Can a president all of a sudden arise, enjoy popularity, and be anti-Semitic? Yes, it can happen. We've seen it happen in different places around the world in the past. The most cultured places it has happened, right? Who would have believed in Nazi Germany at the time where the Jews were so totally acclimated in society and contributing to society, and then all of a sudden a leader arises and his number one agenda is anti-Semitic, right? So I am concerned sometimes that it can happen. But as of now, Israel is the strongest friend to the United States. The United States is Israel's greatest ally. We contribute to each other. We benefit each other in many ways. I mentioned before the Iron Dome. It's just one example, but there are many, many examples how Israeli innovation contributes and benefits the United States. And the United States is there for Israel on a daily basis, right? Whether it's in the United Nations and whether it's other places. So we are blessed with this relationship. We are truly blessed. Whether it can change one day, I am concerned, yes.
Yeah, I'm concerned too. That's why we fought hard to get you here. And so we are really actively working, at least in our backyard, if you will, to try to continue to educate people and help them to understand the importance of supporting the nation of Israel. I want to transition real quick and talk about the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, all right? And many people don't know this, but Tel Aviv has become known as the Silicon Valley of that region, Dr. Newman, and there is tremendous innovation that is happening and taking place over there. We saw a little bit of that mentioned in the video that we watched as you talked about sort of the technology and the things that are coming out of Israel. But, you know, Israel, and many of you guys don't know this, but Israel is a nation the size of New Jersey. And out of Israel is coming some of the most remarkable technological advances, both in just technology and also in medicine and in other things. And so could you just briefly let everybody know, what's happening over there? It's a pretty special thing. All of the innovation, all of the technology, it's pretty incredible.
Thank you for the question. Yes, that's part of the miracle state that we call Israel. I mean, Israel is so small. I don't think that many of you, even those who care about Israel and follow the news about Israel, you understand the small size of Israel. As you said, we are the size of New Jersey, even less than New Jersey. Yet you hear about Israel all the time, right? So it has a negative aspect, which we can talk about, but it has also a positive aspect. And the fact that Israel punches way beyond its weight. We, in innovation, we are a global leader. We are number 2 to the United States. Now imagine how many countries there are, right? And their sizes. So it's understandable that we don't beat the United States. But why should Israel, a small country, beat the UK, Germany, India, China, right? But we do. We're number 2 in the amount of startups, in the leadership in innovation, in the R&D invested as a percentage of the GDP. We're on the map in everything. Now, the amazing thing about innovation is that it touches every aspect of life. Every aspect. Anything you can think of. Mobility, smart cities. We have mayors here, and I'd like to thank the mayors and the pro tem mayors and the council members. Every aspect of a city touches on innovation. Traffic lights. I can talk an hour just on traffic lights, right? The innovation. We have a pilot, and I'll talk 1 minute. We have a pilot in Arizona, an Israeli company that runs the traffic lights in Phoenix, Arizona. Why? Because it's a special system, it's a smart system that clears the roads. It sees in real time where the traffic jams, and it automatically closes the traffic lights where it's not needed and opens them where it is needed. And if there's an ambulance traveling, it will automatically open green lights for the ambulance all way. Right? And this is all done real time. So this is one example, but it touches every single aspect of our life, from health to agriculture, irrigation, smart mobility, smart cities. I'll give another example. Israel, in about 30, 40 years ago, decided to go into the automobile industry. And it was a big mistake. We invented a car. It was called the Susita. It was one of the biggest failures in the history. Because how can we compete with Ford and with,
Right, GM and all these
things. Right, we're small. The hardware is not our field. So we invented this car. It wasn't very successful, and we moved on. Today, we said automobile industry is not for us. Today, we have more than 200 companies that are leading the automobile industry into the future. We're not talking about the hardware of a car, not talking about the door and the roof. We're talking about the brain of the car, the sensors, right? I'm sure you've all heard about the company called Mobileye. Mobileye is an Israeli company. They're the first to make the breakthrough in automated cars. It can read with sensors the entire environment of a car. It comes from the military. Israel's military has these needs, and they're implemented then afterwards in dual use in civilian aspects. So this innovation aspect covers every aspect of life. And I'll just end with a kind of a joke, which is that, they say that Moses took the people out of Egypt, and he was a tremendous leader, but perhaps he wasn't a very good navigator. Why? He took the people of Israel 40 years in the desert, and then brought them to the one country that has the least natural resources in the entire Middle East. I mean, he should have taken us to Canada or to United Arab Emirates, which has great oil reservoirs and gas. Took us to Israel. So Israel has milk and honey, but you can't sell a lot of milk and honey, right? How much money do you make from milk and honey? So we thought for years that, that perhaps there was a mistake there in Moses and the navigation. But today we understand that no, that was one of the wisest things. And these countries that have rich oil and gas reservoirs seek the closeness of Israel today, like United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they know that their economy is built and based on natural resources, which can end tomorrow. In fact, someone can invent tomorrow morning something which is more efficient than gas, and their GDP drops to zero. If somebody tomorrow afternoon invents something which is better than oil, their entire oil reservoirs, which is their entire economy, is worthless. So they're looking for a productive economy. And when they look which economies around the world are the most productive, the most innovative, and the most looking towards the future, they see the United States and Israel. That's what they see. So Moses wasn't so wrong.
Well, and I guess you guys have sort of sworn an oath to never wander for 40 years again, right? So you that reminds me of Mark Twain. Mark Twain, the famous Christian author of generations ago, he visited Israel. This was over 100 years ago he was there. And he walked into the land of Israel and looked around and he said, what's all the hype about? This place is a mess, and so it really is a miracle that Israel has become what it is. I want to just ask you one last closing remark here, and that is, if there's something that you would like to share, a special message, if you will, to the Christian community, to those who are here in this place that would say, we support the people of Israel. Is there something that you would like to share with us, just in closing?
Thank you. I'd like to respond to what you said about Mark Twain. The amazing thing is, if this is not divine spirit or guidance, then what is? When the people of Israel were not in the land of Israel, the land was desolate. Didn't produce anything, it was a desert. Right? Mark Twain came when Israel did not have sovereignty, the people of Israel did not have sovereignty in the land of Israel, and he saw desolate, God-forsaken land. Right? And he described it as such. And the Egyptians ruled over it. We have so many kingdoms that came and went and ruled the land of Israel. And it was desolate. And in the generations just before Israel was reestablished, we had Egyptians sitting in Sinai, and we had Jordan sitting in the West Bank, what's called the West Bank today. There was no Palestinian state. It wasn't ever such an entity. And you had all kinds of kingdoms come and go, and their land remained desolate. And then the people of Israel started returning to the land of Israel, and flourish the desert.
Yes.
And today, Israel is an oasis in the entire Middle East. Right? Water. To give an example of water, everyone thought that the next war would be on water, because Jordan didn't have water, and the Egyptians were difficult in water, and the Palestinians didn't have water, and Israel also had difficulty with water. We used to channel water from the Lake of Galilee, which we all know, right, from the Christian scriptures. Lake of Galilee was going down and down, and everyone used to follow, the whole nation used to follow the red line of the Lake of Galilee, that it shouldn't get too low and then it would be lost forever. And then with technology, Israel came in and set up desalination plants, which are the largest in the Middle East, and started purifying water. Today we have the highest rate of purification and recycling of water in the world. Right? We have 87%. You know what the next number is? 12%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's part of this miracle that we call Israel. Now, if I say what is important that people should know and how can you help, first of all, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the peace of Zion, and pray that this good momentum will continue and that we will have a good government in the United States. Doesn't matter Democrat or Republican, but it should be understand the importance of the relations with Israel, because people can be misled. People can dream up, as we have Congress people, as I said, who have miscalculations and are misled by evil forces. So we should all pray that we should remain with steadfast values and understand the importance. And my last message to you is that there are evil forces out there. There are. You know, we have freedom of choice. In order to have freedom of choice, we have to have two options. One is the good and just and right, and the other is the evil or misled or false. And both are out there, and they compete with each other sometimes. And so we have to be courageous sometimes to stand for what we believe in, to stand for the truth, because there's so much disinformation. Like, for instance, the BDS movement that calls for boycotting Israel, right? No one really understands, or the vast majority do not understand, that the roots of BDS, boycotting Israel, is not because they want a two-state solution, it's because they want to annihilate the state of Israel. The one who established BDS is Omar Barghouti, who says in Arabic that his intentions are to annihilate and destroy the state of Israel and set up a Palestinian state instead of Israel, not alongside Israel. He's not in favor of a two-state solution. He's in favor of one state, a Palestinian state instead of Israel. So people don't understand this, and they're misled by these disinformation which is spread out there. So my message to you is, hold strong to your beliefs. Be courageous in this. You will be challenged sometimes. You can be confident. If you need any time information from us or from Israel, just let us know. We'll be glad to give you information. Visit Israel as much as you can. And my last breath to you today is perhaps to bring you a blessing in Hebrew.
Thank you.
Should I do that?
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to give you a blessing from the Bible, Old Testament, which was the blessing that the priests used to give in the temple to the people of Israel. And we say it in synagogues every Sabbath and every festival. And the blessing goes, Yevrechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God spread his light upon you and upon your communities and give you the blessing of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Thank you. That was amazing. Really appreciate you being here. We want to wrap up just the evening with one more presentation. And I want to invite Dr. Dale Garland, pastor of Hope in the Valley, up here. And I'd also like to invite all of our pastors who are here to join Dale up here on the stage.
I'd like to take this moment to thank Professor David Edry, who's there, who helps arrange this gathering here today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Newman, God is doing something special in our valley, and he's brought a group of pastors together, different denominations, some different beliefs, but united, which is pretty unique, honestly. And so I've asked Dale if he would read a proclamation that we have written that we would like to collectively as the pastors of the San Jacinto Valley to present to you. So,
All right. Dr. Newman, it is my honor to read to you this declaration of solidarity with Israel. I was just there last month. Highly recommended. All right. It says, "We, the pastors of the San Jacinto Valley, heretofore pledge our allegiance to the truths of God's word and the support of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland in accordance with the words of the Almighty God. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people of his treasured possession out of all peoples and are on the face of the earth. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you. For you were the fewest of all peoples, but it was because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt." Deuteronomy 7, 6 through 8. Now the whereases. "Whereas the one and only true God, creator and master of the universe, chose the ancient nation and people of Israel, who were the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to reveal his plan of redemption for the world. Whereas God's covenants with the Jewish people are immutable, and as such, the Jewish people always were and always will remain the chosen people of God. Whereas the Jewish nation is integral in the redemptive and eschatological purposes of God for the world and mankind. Whereas God's eternal purpose is to bless the world through Israel. Whereas it is reprehensible that some Christian denominations consider Israel replaced in the covenants of God by the modern Christian church. Whereas the modern integrating of the Jewish people in Emirates, Israel, and the rebirth of the nation of Israel are in fulfillment of biblical prophecies as written in both the Mosaic and New Covenant. Whereas Christian believers are instructed by Scripture to acknowledge the Abrahamic roots of their faith. Whereas Jesus of Nazareth, being the chief cornerstone of our faith, was a Jewish man born in Bethlehem and crucified and raised in Jerusalem, whose life and ministry was recorded in the New Testament by various Jewish authors. Whereas Christian believers are to actively assist and participate in the plan of God's redemption that calls for the ingathering of the Jewish people and their full and complete restoration in sovereignty as the reconstructed nation of Israel today in their ancestral homeland. And whereas God's prophetic plan is to establish his rule and reign over the earth and all its inhabitants from the ancestral capital city of Jerusalem. Whereas we live with the eternal hope that God is fulfilling his promises and covenant with Israel and that he will bless those who bless them. Dated February 12th, 2023.
Dr. Newman, we would like to end the service. I'm going to invite our musicians back up. We would like to end the service by singing a blessing from the Pentateuch over you and over the people of Israel. And so you're welcome to sit as we sing this blessing over you. And we just want to thank you and say God bless you.
Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. Sing this with us. Amen. 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 יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. Sing with us. Amen. 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 Amen.
May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children.
יחי חסדו עליך לאלפי דורות, משפטיך בלעדיך, דורותיך אחריך.
May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children.
יחי חסדו עליך לאלפי דורות, משפטיך בלעדיך, דורותיך אחריך. רוחו תלך לפניך, לצידך, אחריך, מסביבך, בליבך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך.
In the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing, he is for you, he is for you.
הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך.
May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children.
רוחו תלך לפניך, לצידך, אחריך, מסביבך, בליבך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך.
In the evening, in your coming, and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing, he is for you, he is for you.
הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך.
And may it be so. Shalom. Thank you so much, Dr. Newman. God bless you. All right. I'm going to let you head on out, Dr. Newman, and I know you got your hands full here. We're going to need to get you a suitcase, a rolly suitcase, you know, and wow, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Newman has agreed to stay for just a few minutes, so he'll be outside in the courtyard. If you would like to come by and shake his hand and say hello, that'd be wonderful. Also, there's a representative from El Al here from the Israeli Airlines, so they'll also be out on the courtyard, on the patio. You might want to stop by, get some information if you're thinking about visiting Israel, if you are making plans to go in the future or whatever. I highly encourage you to go stop by their table and check it out. But I do want to just officially thank everybody for coming today. This is truly a historic event for our valley, and we appreciate you being here. I do want to say one more time a big thank you to the city councils of Hemet and of San Jacinto for their pledge. Yes. We are truly blessed to live where we live. And so, anyways, God bless you all. And shalom. All right, peace.